The following program deals with controversial subjects. The theories, opinions, and beliefs expressed are not the only possible interpretation. Viewers are invited to make a judgment based on all available information. Tonight on Encounters, the Hidden Truth.
I saw orange rings of light underneath.
Our search for extraterrestrial life continues.
There is a phenomenon here.
From Florida, many believe this surface photograph of Mars reveals a human face.
This thing may have been carved by intelligence.
Is this proof of life on another planet?
This area of Mars shows evidence that a civilization was once there.
From California, a ghostly vision of a naked body helped save a young boy's life.
I personally believe that she saw a ghost.
From Canada, could Jupiter's recent cataclysm signal our own planet's fate?
It would wipe out human civilization, maybe even all life on the planet.
And can science save us from the inevitable collision? From Vermont, a near-death survivor tells his terrorizing tale.
You cannot imagine such a darkness.
Is this proof of life after death?
We have nothing in Western science or Western medicine to explain this.
Hello, I'm John Marshall, and welcome to Encounters, the Hidden Truth. Ghosts are said by some to be the physical manifestation of a tragedy, restless spirits who cannot leave the scene of their torment.
If this is true, then recently one tragedy could have prevented another from occurring. A mother may have reached out from beyond death in order to save the life of her only child. Christine Skubish was reported missing Thursday, June 6, 1994. The disappearance made headlines. She and her 3-year-old son, Nicky, had been driving along Highway 50 in California when they vanished. When their wrecked car was found nearly a week later, Nicky was hours away from death. He had spent 5 days next to the body of his dead mother. Nicky's survival was amazing, but news reports neglected to mention how he was found. That story begins with Deborah and Nick Hoyt. 5 days after Christine and Nicky Skubish vanished on the highway, the Hoyts were driving along the same stretch of road.
We were just driving around Highway 50 coming here, and we were singing songs, and I was looking for deer, because I always look for deer. And then I saw the naked lady laying on the side of the road. She was laying on her side with her one hand over her head. Not her face, but just over her head. She was really white. I saw her breast, so I knew she was a woman. Her eyes were closed, and I just thought she was dead. And so I started screaming.
So I grabbed her leg and was wondering what was going on and asked her what happened. And then when she calmed down a little bit, she told me that she saw a naked woman on the side of the road. And I told her, well, we have to stop. And she said, no, don't stop, go to the nearest phone.
This is 911 emergency, can I help you? We were driving from Sacramento and I saw a naked lady's body on the road. I was scared to stop because it was so dark and everything, so I told my husband to get to the nearest phone. Can a cop come out here?
Deputy Richard Strasser learned of Deborah's 911 call when he came into work at the county sheriff's office.
I knew the area that they reported it, and we had several officers search that area without success. When they couldn't find it, they were bothered by it. It wasn't your quote routine call. There was something about it that basically everybody that was involved felt something that wasn't normal.
With the Skubishes still missing, the police now had 2 mysteries on their hands. Who was the naked woman on the road? And where was Christine Skubish? It was Deputy Strasser who put the 2 together.
I felt that, different about, or had that hunch about that, yeah, I felt something was up with that. So I went up basically just to search the area where this report had come out.
When Deputy Strasser arrived here, the location of Deborah Hoyt's sighting, he found no naked corpse. But he did find a child's shoe, the first tangible clue on the trail to Nicky and Christine.
It obviously hadn't been there a long time. It wasn't an old beat-up shoe that somebody really didn't care about, and it just seemed out of place. I walked probably about 50 yards further up the roadway, looking down the embankment, and that's when I saw the back end of the car. I ran down the embankment to check to see if, in fact, these people were in the car still, and I did confirm that the driver, which was identified as Christine Skubish, was in the driver's seat. She was fully clothed, seatbelted in, and was confirmed dead at that point.
Tell us about Nicky's condition when you found him.
Looking over at the little boy, he was kind of lying in a fetal position. He looked to be dead to me. And as I got closer to him, I went to check for a pulse in his neck. I knew at that point that he was still alive.
When he was found, Nicky was barely clinging to life. Christine, on the other hand, had lain dead for nearly a week in temperatures approaching 100 degrees. Deputy Jack Greenwood of the Highway Patrol was on duty that morning when the car was found.
Usually anybody that's been dead for a week, exposed to the elements, the heat, there's usually some discoloration, bloating, that type of thing. And that was not the case with her. But it's as though somebody put an umbrella over her and her son and just more or less took care of her.
Police agree that the woman lying by the road had saved Nicky's life, but was this rescue a coincidence or someone's intention? Without telling him anything about the case, we asked psychic Peter James to give us his impressions of the car, the crash site, and the shoe.
It feels like the shoe symbolically has an arrow pointing in a direction, so I don't know that this shoe was found in the car necessarily. I hear screams. My child, Nicky. Nick is the name I hear. I'm beginning to feel her presence now, and I'm feeling that she continues to dwell in this particular area.
Peter is not alone in feeling that Christine stayed close to the site of her death, the place where Deborah Hoyt saw the naked woman.
I personally believe that she saw a ghost.
I believe the woman's spirit had stayed there long enough for the child to be saved or rescued.
The fact that she saw it and he didn't indicates that even more so that perhaps it wasn't, actually a physical body or a dead animal or something that she may have mistaken, but rather what she saw was the vision or something that she was supposed to see.
And there's got to be spirits. I mean, I know I saw what I saw. And if that's what it was, then I'm just glad it helped Nicky.
If Christine is somehow watching out for her son, she's done well. Within a few weeks of the accident, Nicky was on his way to a full recovery.
And there is a recent postscript to this story. After we completed taping, police met with psychic Peter James.
They were so impressed with the results of his on-site examination, they decided to reopen their investigation. We plan on following this case, and we'll keep you informed about any new results.
And Encounters will be right back.
Coming up, what knocked a Russian spacecraft out of Martian orbit? Was it an alien craft captured in this photo? Some believe these photographs of the Martian surface hold the answer.
This thing may have been carved by intelligence.
One of the biggest disappointments to science fiction romantics was when the first Mars probes revealed that the red planet was probably a dead planet. No Martians, just mountains, craters, and sand.
But disappointment turned to triumph when one of those same probes sent back pictures of a strange Martian formation that suggested extraterrestrial intelligence, an intelligence that also seems to have a sense of humor.
Ignition.
Fact that Viking orbiter took 2 medium resolution images of a series of unusual objects on Mars in '76.
This thing looks like it may have been carved by intelligence.
This area of Mars shows quite strong evidence that a civilization was once there.
The face, if it is a sculpted artifact, looks humanoid.
3, 2, 1,
Ignition. Liftoff.
In 1975, NASA launched Viking 1, an unmanned probe to determine whether life existed on the planet Mars. The mission went according to plan, and in July of 1976, the orbiter began sending back thousands of photographs of the Martian landscape. But then the orbiter took photographs of something that seemed to defy the Martian geography. Don Ecker, the research director of UFO magazine, knows one possible explanation.
They have come forward with the hypothesis that this, in fact, very likely represents an artificial construction.
Whatever it is, the object is huge, over a mile long and 1,500 feet high. As to what it is, these pictures are worth thousands of words. This huge object appears to be a gigantic sculpture of a humanoid face staring up into the Martian sky.
It looked like a face to me. It looked like someone had carved a human face and placed it down on the planet.
Vincent DiPietro is a senior engineer under contract to NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center near Washington, D.C. At first, the picture was dismissed as a trick of the Martian light and filed away among the thousands of other Viking photographs. But then, DiPietro and co-worker Gregory Molinar decided to take a closer look.
There was a lot of scuttlebutt around that there was this face that was found on the surface. I went over to the National Space Science Data Center here on base and was able to go through the library and find the picture. And I was able to find that the thing really existed.
More importantly, he discovered another photograph shot a month later. This second photo showed the image of a head had not gone away. In fact, the picture reveals startling facial detail along with a huge pyramid nearby.
There was this thing which was labeled by NASA as HEAD, H-E-A-D. And it was this classical face in the Cydonia region. I guess for about 6 months I was about 3 feet off the ground because the more I dig into it, the more I would find. And the more startling the evidence became that this was not a natural formation.
You know, there was a general feeling among scientists at this time that this whole thing was one big hoax. What changed your mind about it?
Well, I don't believe they thought it was a hoax. I think the feeling was that it was just a trick of lighting. In other words, how could someone put a face there so therefore it wasn't a face?
While the debate continued, DiPietro continued to investigate the mysterious structure. He used a form of color enhancement called bit slice comparison to bring out new details on the face, details that raise new questions as to its origin.
In fact, by doing this bit slice comparison, we're able to find that there's sort of a cavity or a dome in the eye cavity that resembles an eyeball with a pupil in it. And another friend of mine, Dr. Mark Carlotto, found teeth in the mouth area.
This is Viking frame 35A72 that was rediscovered by DiPietro and Molinar in the late 70s. We see the face near the center of the frame. This is a magnification and enhancement of the face from that picture.
Dr. Mark Carlotto is a graduate of Carnegie Mellon University and an expert in image processing and satellite remote sensing. He has scrutinized the puzzling photographs.
I had a lot of tools at my disposal, many years of experience looking at satellite images, and I thought perhaps some of these tools, some of these software algorithms could be used to analyze and learn more about the face. Beyond just the gross appearance of a face, the eye sockets and the mouth, we see fine detail. There are crossed lines, the forehead areas, there are broad lateral stripes across the face, and a fine structure in the mouth that almost appear to be teeth.
By using sophisticated image enhancement techniques, including fractal analysis, Dr. Carlotto was able to bring out more details in the original Viking photograph.
The basis of these algorithms is a type of object or mathematical structure known as a fractal. In other words, when you look at it at different scales or resolutions, it looks the same in some sense.
When Dr. Carlotto's enhancement technique is applied to the original images, what was just a blurry image becomes a three-dimensional image of a face, a pyramid, and a fortress.
Now, when we step back, we see the face is not an isolated formation. We see a collection here to the southwest that has been termed the city. We step further back, there are still more unusual objects in relative close proximity. And then to the south, a formation that appears to be a five-sided pyramid called the D&M pyramid.
It's been thought of by some people to be five-sided. I believe it to be four-sided, with the fourth side being totally devastated and broken into pieces. This appears to have been either wind-blown or carved by intelligence.
Despite the photographic evidence presented, NASA insists that the objects are natural and the images were created by tricks of lighting.
In fact, there are 10 images over the area. It could not be a quirk of light because it would have just gone away. It would have been a quirk and disappeared. And instead of disappearing, we found more detail.
Here we see the face in three views under simulated lighting conditions, with the sun to the northwest, a little further to the west, and then due west. And we see not only do the facial features persist over all of these views, but the expressions actually change a little bit.
But NASA maintains its position, a position that baffles many researchers.
The fear of the unknown drives a grieving process that always begins with denial. And the denial is rampant on these questions.
Former astronaut Brian O'Leary is now an author and researcher. Stan McDaniel is a philosophy professor and the author of the McDaniel Report. Both agree that NASA's conventional explanation does not stand up to close scrutiny.
NASA lied about that particular area. For years, they had been telling people, researchers, interested parties, that they had other photographs that proved that the face was nothing more than a trick of light and shadow. And just recently, in this past year, that's been proven to be false. They have no such photos.
It looks like a face. It bewilders me how people can look at it and not experience this eerie feeling of my God, what is up there? What is it? To be able to say, oh, it must have been wind erosion, I think involves a lot of psychological denial.
Scientists know that there's something going on, but they don't want to let on there is, because if they do, the two things, peer pressure and funding, it can get you every time.
Russian scientists had shown interest in the face on Mars prior to their launch of their Phobos 1 and 2 probes in 1988. Although Phobos 1 suffered a technical glitch, Phobos 2 made it to Mars.
What appeared to happen was that the Phobos craft, according to the Soviets themselves, encountered, to use their words, something that should not have been there.
These black and white photographs were taken by Phobos 2. There appears to be a white object measuring over 15 miles in length situated near the craft.
What the Russians then said happened was this craft or object pointed itself toward the Phobos probe, and their probe disappeared.
Some believe this probe was deliberately destroyed. To them, the face on Mars might be a warning to stay away. Others theorize it's some sort of lure to attract visitors. The only way to learn the truth is to return to Mars and see this alleged face with human eyes.
This should tell the public, hey, look, we're finding all of this evidence that suggests, just suggests, that maybe there may have been life on Mars. Shouldn't we take a look? Yes, we should.
That's why we have a space program in the first place. We realize that some of what we need to know is out there, and we can't put our blinders on and only be after certain kinds of knowledge out there. We've got to be open to whatever knowledge the universe has in store for us.
Let's say for the moment this face is an artificial creation. Why would it resemble a human face?
John, if, and it's a big if, this formation was made by extraterrestrials, it could be some sort of Martian tourist trap inviting us over for a visit. Astronaut and author Brian O'Leary has joined us tonight. Brian, I don't think NASA's very happy with you anymore, are they?
Well, I guess they're not, but I'm not very happy with NASA either because in this particular case, they have actually ignored the evidence. And it's very clear to me, given 10 years of research that I've been involved in, and a number of others, that Stan McDaniel is right, that the research hasn't really been given proper attention.
If the face on Mars is indeed an artificial structure, what then?
Well, that, of course, is the big question. And I happen to think the evidence is very strong. It means the humanoid form is universal. Perhaps because from the UFO phenomenon we have also humanoid visitors. And of course, it's going to change our whole perception of ourselves. It's an extraordinary implication. I think we've been looking in the wrong places for extraterrestrial life. And now the paradigm is shifting. A whole new world view is unfolding in science and who we are. And so this is a very exciting time.
Dr. Leary, thanks for being with us tonight in Encounters. We'll be right back.
Coming up, a near-death survivor tells his horrifying tale.
You cannot imagine such a darkness.
Is it proof of life after death?
We have nothing in Western science or Western medicine to explain this.
Our report next.
The overwhelming majority of people who have survived a near-death experience describe visiting a land of peace and love, a place they call heaven. But other survivors are convinced they literally traveled to hell and back, and the journey has turned their lives inside out. Here's our story. Hell, a concept as old as religion, but hell may be more than an abstract concept.
And they start scratching and biting me, and it really, really hurts, just like the real world. It's very painful, and I'm screaming and yelling, and they take a lot of pleasure out of my pain. And they're all laughing, and there's this tremendous cacophony of noise all around me.
13 million people in this country have died and lived to tell about it. Most describe visiting a world of light and warmth, but others tell a very different tale. Russian scientist and psychiatrist George Rodinaya took a journey that, while incredible, is not unusual.
I was waiting for a cab, and I was ready to depart to United States to work for Yale University.
Friday, September 25th, 1976. A dissident scientist, Dr. Rodinaya, had been trying to get out of the Soviet Union. Finally, he was given permission, or so he thought. The KGB had a different idea.
I know that first hit came to my legs, and he came so strong that I flew up on the car, but instead of falling down, I flew several meters forward, and then this car moved toward me and ran over me.
Dr. Rodinaya was dying of massive internal injuries, but as technicians tried to coax life back into his mangled body, he was beyond pain, beyond consciousness.
I'm in total black, horrible darkness. You cannot write, you cannot paint, you cannot imagine such a darkness.
Then Dr. Rodinaya began the journey, so often reported, the journey beyond life.
Such an incredible crystal white. It's everything around is in white. Everything is bright. And the horizon is white. Everything is bright. And it's as a flash of camera.
At this point, Dr. Rodinaya found himself floating above himself in what is known as an out-of-body experience.
I watched how they operated on my body. I watched how they declared dead. I watched how my wife cried. I watched how they put me in morgue, how they closed the door.
As an autopsy could not be performed until the following Monday, Dr. Rodinaya's body was left in the morgue. But as the nightmare continued, Dr. Rodinaya believes he roamed the world telepathically.
If anybody had any thought that what's happened with George, poor George, I was there. For example, I could see what my wife was thinking, my friends were thinking, and that was the incredible experience.
Dr. Rodinaya claims he watched from above when physicians began the autopsy. Finally, one of them noticed his eyes were open and closed them. They opened again. The physician closed them a second time.
He became curious, and he closed it and waited, and he took hand up, and he saw that, the pupils are convulsing, becoming smaller and smaller. And he said, whoa, that's life.
Amazingly, 1/3 of all patients brought back from death report a similar journey. Dr. Bruce Grayson has been studying these near-death experiences for the past 20 years.
Some people who do have this out-of-body experience interpret it as the soul or the spirit leaving the body. Others just say, I left my body. We have nothing in Western science or Western medicine to explain this.
These near-death experiences have been reported for thousands of years.
As far back as we have records from American Indian cultures, they're in the Bible, they're in the Egyptian and Tibetan Book of the Deads, from ancient Chinese writings. All these cultures have left records of near-death experiences similar to those we hear now.
Some researchers believe the experience is the final function of a failing brain, and that the images are nothing more than hallucinations.
During the time between the stoppage of the heart and lungs and the ultimate death of all the cells of the brain, that brain is shutting down in a variety of ways, but it's still capable of producing experiences.
They also point out that these experiences may not be unique to people who are dying.
Almost all of the kinds of things that we hear people describe in so-called near-death experiences are experienced from time to time by people having ordinary dreams at night as well.
But near-death survivors say their experiences seem much more real than dreams.
People don't transform their lives on the basis of a dream or a hallucination or a drug-induced state, in fact. Whereas following a very brief near-death experience, people drastically change their attitudes, beliefs, lifestyles.
Research on the subject is hampered by the fact that most near-death survivors don't like to talk about it.
They're afraid, rightfully so, that they will be thought crazy or ridiculed or rejected for doing so.
Other people have an even more compelling reason for silence, for they are convinced that they went to hell.
These people in the darkness, I believe, were just people whose lives were full of contempt and hurt and hate. They were interested in playing with me, you know, trying to elicit as much terror from me as they could.
Before his experience, Howard Storm was a university art professor and successful artist. Howard's life took a dramatic turn in June of 1985. On a trip to Paris, France, he suffered a ruptured duodenum and was rushed to an infirmary. But there was no surgeon on hand. Howard was given 5 hours to live.
So I said goodbye to my wife. She said goodbye to me. She got up, she hugged me and kissed me, and she cried and I cried, and then eventually she sat back down, and I decided to let it go, let it happen. And I went unconscious.
The next thing he knew, he was out of his body.
I was absolutely convinced that I was alive and real, except there was this corpse in the bed that looked like me, but it couldn't be me because I was standing there yelling and screaming and trying to talk to my wife and my roommate, and I thought they were just playing games with me.
And then he heard voices encouraging him to follow them out of the room and down the hall.
I got to the point where I said, I don't want to go with you any further, and with that they started to pull and push at me to keep me going with them, and I started to fight back.
Howard soon found himself at the center of a nightmare.
It was an orgy. And I was the centerpiece of the orgy, and it was an orgy of cruelty and pain, my pain, which gave them a certain amount of delight and pleasure.
Ultimately, he asked for help.
And with that, a person of light, a beautiful, radiant being, came there and reached down and picked me up, and as I was being picked up, I saw myself for the first time, and I looked like roadkill. I mean, I was covered with gore, and I was all torn up. And as I was being picked up, all of that disappeared.
His experience ended when a nurse walked in and he regained consciousness.
It was now 9:30 at night, and she said, a doctor has arrived at the hospital and he's going to do the surgery on you immediately. And he did.
Howard Storm still paints, but he left his position at the university to become a minister. Before his brush with death, he worked with nudes. Now his works are filled with images of darkness and light. His case is not unusual. No matter what the explanation or where the ultimate destination, nearly all near-death survivors find the experience changes them for the better.
My brain began to work absolutely differently. I could grasp anything. I was working. It was very, very easy to learn, to work, to study, to be alive.
We find that once people are no longer afraid of dying, they're not afraid of living either. They're more willing to take risks, to enjoy life to the fullest because they're not afraid of losing it.
Many skeptical scientists believe that near-death experiences are nothing more than hallucinations. One thing is for certain, in many cases these visions have profoundly changed their lives for the better, and nothing could be more real than that. Encounters will be back in a moment.
Coming up, could Jupiter's recent cataclysm signal our own planet's fate?
It would wipe out human civilization, maybe even all life on the planet.
And can science save us from the inevitable collision? Our report next.
You know, we've spent a lot of time and effort bringing you stories about alleged visitors from outer space. But all of these stories lack one thing: definitive hard evidence that proves their extraterrestrial origin.
Well, our next story is also about alien visitors, only this time we've got the proof right here. When men first ventured off the planet Earth, they weren't sure what they would find or what would find them. Some scientists feared the moon might be home to a space virus for which there's no known cure. So when the Apollo astronauts returned, NASA went to great lengths to prevent exposing Earth to potentially deadly alien organisms.
Back in the 1960s, we didn't know as much as we know now about life and outer space and how dangerous it is for living organisms in outer space. So there were some scientists, including some distinguished ones such as Carl Sagan, who suggested that when we brought the astronauts back from the moon, we should quarantine them and also the lunar rocks, just in case they picked up some kind of exotic virus on the moon that when it came back to Earth would kill everybody on Earth. Well, as it turned out, there are no exotic viruses on the moon, and the reason is pretty straightforward. The moon is a very hostile place, no atmosphere. It's constantly bathed in intense, deadly radiation from the sun and cosmic rays from the galaxy. It would just fry any kind of life form, human or virus or whatever.
But the biggest danger from outer space is not disease, but a possibility of a catastrophic impact by a comet or meteorite. 60 million years ago, a similar collision might have killed the dinosaurs. Recently, Jupiter was hit by a string of comet fragments, some miles across in size, that blew huge holes in its atmosphere. Earth could be next. In fact, this doomsday play may be in rehearsal right now. In October 1992, eyewitnesses spotted an object as it left a trail of fire across the eastern United States. In the town of Peekskill, New York, it finally smashed into the earth with such force that it penetrated the trunk of a parked car. In June of 1994, another meteorite crashed to Earth near a populated area, this time on a farm in the Canadian province of Quebec.
I heard a noise like an airplane in the sky. Something spinning, something like falling over there in the field. We found this piece of rock, and right away I knew it was probably a meteorite.
After billions of years in space, on a journey of millions of miles, the meteorite had fallen only 100 yards from Stephen Forcier's family home.
Meteorites fall from the sky, rocks that have not been changed by time. They are primordial relics of creation. And by analyzing them, you can understand what the chemistry of the solar system was like right at the time when it all began. So they're very important objects to study. That's why scientists go to a lot of trouble to find them.
Within hours, Dr. Richard Hurd, curator of the Canadian Geological Survey, was at the impact site.
My job as curator of the National Collection was to get down here and to help identify the thing and to find out how much there might be and to start documenting it as much as possible.
Every day, tons of space debris smashes into the Earth's atmosphere, but most of it falls unnoticed.
A minimum of 10,000 tons of meteorite material fall on the Earth every day, but most of it's as dust. There are meteor showers, there are fireballs like this every day.
Had the same comet that hit Jupiter hit Earth, the results would have been devastating.
If this comet hit the Earth, it would probably change the climate for months, perhaps even years at a time. It would drive up millions of tons of dust, create millions of tons of water vapor in the atmosphere that would act like a shield keeping the sun's rays out and probably block sunlight long enough to cause Earth's climate to cool, perhaps so cool that it would wipe out human civilization, maybe even all life on the planet.
Earth's appointment with cosmic catastrophe may already be scheduled. Today, tomorrow, or millions of years from now. But the odds are that day will come.
Encounters will be back in a moment.
When we return,
I saw orange rings of light underneath.
our search for extraterrestrial life continues.
There is a phenomenon here.
When our cameras follow a team of UFO investigators next.
Now, some UFO skeptics would like you to believe that all UFO researchers are gullible, scientifically ignorant crackpots. Some are. Many aren't.
That's right, John. One organization in particular has earned a reputation for their sober, dedicated analysis of UFO encounters. They're called the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON. Recently, we observed this organization in action. Vancouver, British Columbia. Like every city in the world, UFOs have allegedly crisscrossed its skies. Last spring, radio disc jockey Bill Courage saw and videotaped a UFO. One night, he told his listeners about it. The feedback was overwhelming.
What surprised me was the next day, I still got calls. The subsequent week, 4 weeks, 5 weeks after that, I was still receiving calls.
To answer some of his listeners' questions, Bill called in a special guest.
The Bill Courage Show, a special Friday in that we're speaking with those who have seen unusual things in the sky to help straighten out some of these stories. The man with the Mutual UFO Network, Michael Stranick, in studio here, and we have another tale to tell. So, Andy, you saw something rather strange rather recently.
Yeah, just after.
The Mutual UFO Network has thousands of members all over North America and in over 50 countries around the world. As head of MUFON of Canada, Michael Stranick spends much of his time searching for proof of the existence of UFOs.
I personally think this is the most important thing that has ever faced the human race. We have to do it because nobody else is doing it.
But is there really anything to be studied? The answer's up to you.
Make up your own mind. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I stopped doing that years ago. There is a phenomenon here. Take a look at it. If you can explain it, fine, I'm willing to listen. So far, I haven't heard a good skeptical argument.
Among the callers was a woman named Andrea.
Andrea, we're all ears. Tell us of your experience.
Hi. Well, this was nothing like I had ever seen in my life before. There were
The experiences she described were extraordinary, yet they fit a pattern.
On occasions, I have woken up with my back burnt. Other times, I've woken up with my eye incredibly swollen and full of blood. I believe that I have an implant in my eye.
Michael knew Andrea's story would be worth checking out.
But you know, some of the people who say they've seen UFOs, they don't come across as very credible.
It's not been my experience. I don't know who you've spoken to, but I'd say most of the people who report UFOs to us are extremely credible. These are people whose testimony would put you or me in prison. Their testimony's believed in a court of law. It's just when it comes to the UFO problem, people don't want to believe these people.
I asked Michael what he looks for when he analyzes a UFO video.
Okay, I think that object there could pass as the sun, shrouded by a bit of fog.
Oh, it could. In the entire clip, though, if that's, you mentioned passing, it's passing right over the camera, and if that's the sun, we're in big trouble.
Can you explain what that object is doing?
It appears to be sitting there being a little odd. I don't know what it is. We won't really have any clue to what it is until we have it analyzed by the MUFON video analyst. Then we'll have a better idea what it may not be. We probably will never know what it is for certain.
After you, sir.
Assisting Michael in his research is UFO investigator Graham Conway. Together, they hit the road to follow up on new leads. For Graham, a former police officer, this type of work is second nature.
I often find that they have lived near power stations and power lines. This keeps on coming up.
Field investigation is only one of many responsibilities of MUFON. In Canada, the paperwork begins in the home office of Michael Stranick. This is where much of the hard work gets done, including analysis of hundreds of home videos.
The paperwork is astounding, the hours are incredible, and it's a volunteer organization.
Meanwhile, at the home of Daniel Bourgeois and Colleen Allen, Michael and Graham begin by tape recording the couple's account of their encounter.
I saw orange rings of light underneath. I just could see the bottom. It was horrifying. It bothers me when I tell people that I've seen a UFO. The skepticism is so frustrating to have people
not believe you when it's so real.
After gathering data for over an hour, Michael and Graham thought their investigation was complete.
And if anything else should occur, please let us know.
You know, actually, I wanted to mention something to you that just skipped my mind.
What's that?
I wanted to ask you, does my huge hydro bills mean anything to you? Because we have humongous hydro bills.
Meaning, well, how much is huge?
We, in the winter time, about 600 every 2 months.
For this house?
300 in the summer.
Oh, you've got to be kidding. You're not using any heat in the summer.
We checked out their hydroelectric bills and found they were enormous. On a hunch, Graham and Michael inspected the neighborhood.
It's the nearest area where these power lines are located, and there's the UFO lines. That's about, what, quarter of a mile from their house?
Just about.
Yeah.
We've noticed a real correlation to power transformers, power lines, substations, especially abduction cases.
Their next visit is to Andrea Shale, the woman who claimed on the radio to be an abduction victim. Andrea told us that in a desperate attempt to escape these alien abductors, she has moved over 42 times. With tape recorder rolling, Michael and Graham listened to Andrea's story.
They have holding tanks, and it's like got a blue liquid in it. To me, it was like being sterilized.
When Michael and Graham told me about Andrea's claims, I investigated for myself. I wondered if she wasn't just confusing dreams with reality.
I know what a dream is. I've had nightmares, I've had dreams all my life, just like you or anybody else. You don't wake up from a dream with a nosebleed. You don't wake up from a dream being burnt, a severe burn on your back. My eye was swollen out like this, just like a baseball. Then I had an x-ray done at the inside of my eye. And behind my eye, they showed me on the x-ray was a little round ball-bearing thing. And the specialist told me that they could not remove this, whatever it was. They didn't know how it got there, but they could not remove it because it was right next to the optic nerve, and I would go blind if they tried to.
We managed to obtain a copy of Andrea's x-rays. It appears something strange is behind her right eye.
I consider Andrea to be a very normal person by any other standards, and her experiences are similar to what I've heard from other directions, from other people over a long period of time.
Despite their sympathetic approach, Graham and Michael find that people are reluctant to describe their UFO experiences.
Credibility is like virginity. You only lose it once. You never regain it.
Few people who encounter UFOs are seeking publicity. They simply need someone to tell them that they're not hallucinating, and they're not alone. As an organization that's been compared to a crisis hotline or to Alcoholics Anonymous, MUFON does both.
It's like receiving a life-saving ring when you're drowning, because there's nothing out there, and they're the only people out there that can help you.
Sandra, just how do Michael and Graham deal with the inevitable skepticism they must encounter?
Well, John, as you've seen, these men are professionals. And like many hardened UFO experts, they understand that skeptics go with the territory. And after investigating story after story, they're pretty skeptical themselves.
As they well should be. And Encounters will be right back.
If you would like to contact us here at Encounters, write to Encounters, P.O. Box 36B47, Los Angeles, California, 90036. To contact us by phone, call 213-525-1UFO. Or to contact us online, visit the Encounters forum on CompuServe by typing Go Encounters or the following number. And thank you for your interest in Encounters.
The boundaries of human experience are expanding daily. Phenomena once thought to be fantasy are now part of accepted science. Maybe, just maybe, the fantastic stories we've seen tonight will become an accepted part of tomorrow's hidden truth. Think about it. I'm John Marshall. Good night.
Fox Friday night is electrifying. First, a plot to kill Mantis leaves him with no escape. Is it true the Mantis is dead?
Yes.
Mantis. Then, They say it never happens.
Former FBI who also claims to be an alien abductee.
They say it isn't real.
The government knows about it.
But Friday, Agents Mulder and Scully will discover the terrifying truth. Watch the most thrilling X-Files ever. A brand new episode after Mantis, Friday.